Hi, thanks for tuning in to our Practical Nerds weekly podcast. I'm Shub, and together with my partner and co host Patric, we normally invest in founders in design, construction, renovation, and logistics technology. Many of our friends in the ecosystem wanted us to start a podcast on the built world, and in return, we decided to honor their request with a show about nothing at all. Hey Patrick, we are back again. We had a bit of a disruption to our usual weekly schedule of Practical Nerds, but hopefully we are sneaking in here with an episode before further disruption potentially in the near future. So how have you been?
Doing great, but not as great as you because you will actually celebrate Thanksgiving in Japan. They you
That
should
is
bring
right,
pumpkin.
and that's the reason, obviously, that I would go to Japan to celebrate
Yeah.
Thanksgiving. Yes.
Didn't they tell you that cherry blossom is not in November?
Oh, I mean, I was past that. I had to just celebrate Thanksgiving in Japan, or rather celebrate Thanksgiving anywhere else in the world or everywhere else in the world. So that's how I roll.
Okay. Yeah. Well done. Well chosen. But yeah, bring your pumpkins and perhaps it's pumpkin
Yes,
blossom that you can introduce as a new tradition.
yes. Oh, you always do this, man. I thought of like a nice segue at a time to what we were thinking, but you always leave me at a point where then I need to think of yet on the spot, think of another way to bring us back. So now I have to somehow find something with pumpkins and Thanksgiving, and all of this stuff. So okay, so you know what?
And
What
this
I'll
was Practical Nerd.
yes. All right. So okay, so I have no intelligent way to connect pumpkins and Thanksgiving with what I thought. So what I thought was, recently, over in recent months, we've done a few episodes where we have talked about how, the chemistry or what sort of dynamic exists between or should exist, in our opinion, between founders. We've also spoken about how either game theory or Squid Game or the Hunger Game psychology affects parties in different interactions and how that plays into discussions between founders as well as other parties. And I think it's an interesting way to, I guess, step into similar territory, but navigate an entirely different discussion is to think about how. So, okay, between you and me and our other colleagues, we receive hundreds, actually thousands of pitches we've received over our time at Fundamental, and we've seen like quite the spectrum of how founders conduct themselves, what they tell us, and so on. And all the time, I feel like we kind of have this wish of saying, I wish this person would have said this, or I wish this person would have done that. That would
Mhm.
have helped us so much more. So that's what we thought we'll do this episode on, of a few things which we wish founders would get about the pitching process or the fundraising process, and what we would like to see.
Mm. I mean, I think it's good to reflect on this every now and then. Also, because sometimes you just see something still for the first time. I mean,
Mhm.
How many startups do you think you met over the years? 10,000?
Might well be, yes.
Yeah. And yet, every now and then you are seeing something new in terms of a method, a process, behavior, etc. And then you're like, hey, actually, I wish I would see this more often, right? So it's the ultimate apprenticeship job, as we've referenced here before.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I can kick us off. I think it's a big one for me. Um, my my number one that surprisingly you practically never, is founders that even at a pre-seed, pre-founding stage have a extremely specific tactical elaboration of how they're going to build that business.
Mhm.
So they will oftentimes not only in communicating with investors but actually to themselves towards the running of the business, colleagues, etc. They will not say, okay, this is how I'm going to do marketing. These are the three bets that I'm going to take in marketing. This is the 3 conferences I'm going to. This is the 3 posters that I'm going to put up in this corner of that conference. This is the slogan that will be on that poster. And this is, however, the kind of specificity that, guess what, Shub, you will actually have to execute.
Yeah.
So by not being specific, by not being tactical, by not being actionable, all you're doing is delaying all of that into the future for a future moment at which you will have to have it. And so if you're going to have it anyway, it's worthwhile having it today. Of course, we all have to prioritize, but whatever you can convince yourself of on a tactical, actionable level is worth having. So oftentimes I wish that founders would actually spend another 3 months before they actually founded a business, 6 months, and they became so tactical that when they show you their master plan, grand plan, not slide deck, but actually the thing that they wrote down as, okay, here's how I'm going to execute, that my reaction is, this is the most actionable I have ever seen. This is what I wish I would get, and I practically never get it.
Yeah. For the avoidance of doubt, I'm putting words in your mouth, Patrick, but I'm fairly confident this is what you meant. You're not saying that we would like for founders to be tactical in lieu of being strategic. What we are saying is it is important to have both aspects.
Yeah.
I think a lot is talked about founders being strategic, talking about, visionary plans and so on. And I think the common belief often is like, hey, just keep executing or hustling, making mistakes, and eventually you'll find your way. I think not enough is discussed about the importance of preempting and tactically planning ahead. So, for example, I think a few case studies we've had internally at Fundamental, where we've had cases where there are founders who describe a whole lot of things about what they can achieve over the next few years. But if you ask them to describe what they will do over the next 6 months, quite often they don't have much of an idea. Not to say that I wouldn't call it a red flag per se, but it is definitely something that you have to ask yourself, because there will come a point, obviously, imminently as you're raising, you will have to answer that question for yourself.
That's a hallmark answer, right? So when you actually ask about that level of tactical specificity for the next 6 months, the first hallmark answer is, I don't know, but you have to remember the vision, or you have to know that our ambition is this. So that's one. And two, absolute hallmark answer to someone who has not done a good job about that is, well, that's why we're raising money, to find out.
Yeah.
No. Oh my God, that is not why you're raising money. You're raising money because you have a strong hypothesis of what that tactic is going to be, and now give me the money to execute that on the way towards my grand vision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think an important reason, in very practical terms, is how many times have we seen this, Patrick, where just to get to a working tactical plan for the next 6 months, then takes several months after you've raised your money. So you also lose time, momentum, opportunity cost, all of those things. You're just wasting it away, and because you've postponed it to another time in the future.
I think that is the norm that happens, and then the maybe right next in the pecking order of what happens is the type of company that, because they haven't been specific, because they haven't been actionable, will actually say, well, we'll have to experiment. Yes, I want you to experiment, but an experiment should follow a thesis, not the other way around. It's a difference between research and development. So if you're just saying, oh, I raise money and then we're going to run all the experiments, I will ask you, okay, so what experiments against what thesis? And if then you tell me, yeah, but you have to remember the ambition is this, or that's why we're raising money. Sorry, you haven't thought about your business. That's not founder work, that's just luck. That's not founder work.
Yeah, and in an ideal world, your 6-month tactical plan is already in motion. It doesn't necessarily start because of a fundraising event. It's already in motion, and which communicates that you're more mission oriented to the company, and it's not based on an externality guiding you towards tactical objectives. But B, I think it's so much more credible and believable that since you've already started on the plan, this is the plan that you intend to follow through on once the money's come through.
But let's double underline because it's really worthwhile. So tactical is so specific that it's painful for you to write it out. It's literally, if you're starting, Factors was the other day, our neobank for contractors was the other day in the news for their 56 million equity plus debt fundraise, etc. And so in a business like that, you need to sit down and literally define, okay, so here, this is how I'm going to do my underwriting process. And so when you raise for such a business and you're like, well, we're raising in order to find out what is going to be our underwriting process, why would you want to do it that way? Why wouldn't you just sit down and before you actually do this, go into the market, figure out as much as you can, customers, capital providers, other sorts of partners, and through these conversations, you figure out your way of doing the underwriting, and then you write it to such a minutiae that people will see it and they will be like, okay, this is executable. We don't know whether we're going to be right about it, but this is like executable. You can give it to your hiree, to your new hire, Monday morning, 8 a.m., and they can execute it. Why would you prefer to delay that? I will never understand that. It is so valuable to actually have that.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more.
But then why are people delaying it, Shub? What do you think are the reasons?
Look, the truth of the matter is it's not the easiest thing. As I think you hinted at just a few moments ago, getting into the details is not as straightforward and actually a whole lot more demanding than it sounds. It means that you're quote unquote committing to a plan which you might be answerable for in the near future, which is not the easiest thing for everyone to be held accountable to right away. And even to come to the granularity of a tactical plan, you need to do a lot of research, fact finding, a lot of primary work, etc., which is also hard work. And then, of course, you still need to do some A/B testing to figure out which approach makes sense and so on.
Yeah.
Look, as crude as this might sound, a lot of people would prefer to move that part of the grunt work and the heavy lifting and the accountability to after a fundraise is done because they feel like it gives them a little bit more optionality and breathing room.
I mean, the metaphor that comes to mind is if you want to get in top shape, there is really only one method. That is bring your own body to a gym or to the outside and actually let your body work out. And it's your mind that will suffer, right? It's your mind that will find this exhausting, that will have to overcome the inertia, etc. Whereas if you want to, so it'll literally be the founder sitting down, doing the primary fact finding, writing the tactical plan, etc. Right? So that's what we're saying. And founders, seriously, it's unbelievable how rarely this happens. Shub, out of the 10,000 companies you met, I would bet it's less than 10 that actually presented you with such a plan.
Yeah. If I had to make this, I would say low double digits, if I had to make a guess. Yeah.
Unbelievable, right? And so instead, to stay in the metaphor, what you get to see is a lot, I'll go to the gym tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or
I'll go to the gym. I'll go to the gym once you get me a membership.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what you also see is if you remember the 80s, 90s shopping TV, these devices that you could buy that would get electrical stimulus into your abs because that is supposed to train your abs. Like that's the equivalent to, it's a bit painful to write this. Let me delegate it to my other guy here.
Yes. That's actually a fabulous analogy. Yeah.
This happens all the time. All the time, right? Your brain has to do the muscle exercise, the brain muscle, metaphorically. So
nice.
Okay, so look, I think on this one, but what's the second next thing on our pet peeve list here that we wish more founders did?
So this is something we have touched upon in an entirely separate episode, in terms of being very focused and determined to seek out bottlenecks. And when I say bottlenecks, I mean the bottlenecks could reside within the founders themselves. The bottlenecks could reside within the team setup, or something else about the company setup. It could be versus a competition, versus, there's so many other possibilities. I wish more founders would be openly embracing the concept of bottlenecks, weaknesses, and so on.
Mm.
I mean, look, something as basic as when you ask folks about acknowledging their competition, what proportion of companies even openly and honestly acknowledge competition in the truest sense? I find just that basic test, I find most companies fail. And not
It's always dismissive.
and if you want to have an honest discussion, or okay, forget about an honest discussion. How many founders would volunteer to say what they are not good at or what they're weak at and why they might
Mm.
not be a fit for this venture? I
Mm.
find very, very small number of founders have the maturity and the, frankly, level of confidence to state that upfront without being prompted for it.
But so okay, so you're raising both these examples in the context of bottlenecks because you're saying, hey, I myself, a lack of a capability could be a bottleneck
Hmm.
to this current phase of my business, or a competitor might be a bottleneck why I'm not getting certain conversion with a certain account because there's buying choice and they win half of the buying choice from the customer. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if I don't acknowledge that bottleneck, I cannot remove it.
Yes. That's right. And usually acknowledging the bottleneck also means acknowledging something is not awesome about either yourself or your business. So you need to openly acknowledge that, hey, this is where I'm going wrong.
I really like this bottleneck obsession, but I would say in terms of even using the language, it almost never happens.
Hmm.
If you go into, let's say, using different words, terminology, etc., again, probably 1 in 1,000. I would say that is really good and really obsessed with it. I don't know if that checks out with your numbers.
I think that feels like it's on the mark.
And you notice, right? So you notice when you literally ask founders, hey, what stands between, so for example, one way you can phrase it is, hey, what stands between you and your next quarter's objectives?
Hmm.
You know what, Shub? 999 founders, let's say 990, will give you resources as an answer.
Yep.
They will say, I need more money in order to hire these people. That's not the question. You hire
Yeah.
these people in order to remove a bottleneck. What is actually the
Yeah.
bottleneck that stands between you? It's
Yes.
unbelievable how the human brain
Yeah.
works.
No, you're absolutely right. You know, the other interesting thing I find, and I'm sure you've made this observation, Patrick, if you meet with successful repeat founders, second, third time founders who've gone through like a very hard journey and hopefully
Mm,
delivered some success, I find they tend to lead in conversations with this sort of topic on what might not
mm.
work out or what is weak. And that tells me, uh, and this is my hypothesis here, that tells me that a lot of these founders who have eventually finally completed the gauntlet and seen the a good end, if sorry, that didn't sound right, but let's say a successful conclusion to their startup journey, uh, a lot of them probably are wishing or wished at the time that, hey, wish someone would have made us more aware, or I myself was more
Mm.
aware that if I was just more honest about bottlenecks or sort them out, sort them to fix early in the journey, I could have saved myself so much heartache later in the journey,
I
which is
agree.
why they seem to obsess more about it early on in their second innings.
And even if you can't remove the bottleneck right now, knowing it will allow you to prioritize differently. Sometimes it can actually be um, the information that you needed in order to make a strategic directional choice, where you say, hey, okay, maybe I cannot fix this bottleneck, but over there it doesn't play out. Over there is also looking pretty awesome. I always like that you should actually win against competition by strategy, not by competing. It goes back into that kind of a mantra. So, but again,
Yes.
it all starts with this, right? Objectives, bottlenecks. So again, it's kind of it's surprising how obvious this is, and yet how rarely we see it.
Yeah, it is frankly incredibly rare. It's also, I guess, maybe this is the theme of this episode, staying with your gym and fitness analogy. It's like saying you're working in the gym and a certain exercise feels too strenuous or too painful, right? Bottleneck solving approach would be like, hey, you figure out how to get better at it and improve your performance with that
Yeah.
exercise. The unfortunately, the more common mindset is, hey, this is not working out for me, so I'll just skip it altogether, do something else, and pretend like everything is awesome.
I mean,
Uh,
there's this saying,
yeah.
right? I think there's different versions of it, but the one that I always remember is pain is what stands between what you are and what you want to be.
Yes. Also very appropriate for this. Very, very, very topical. Yes.
Yeah. So, okay. I have a third one
Hmm.
that is sort of a peeve of mine, and that is I personally. So this is one where you can have different approaches to company building and even to like life, management, happiness, etc. So I'm not telling you this as, oh my God, if you don't do it like that, you cannot be successful. That's not my point. I think I'm speaking more of, I don't know, taste, I guess, or what I believe gives you a better chance at succeeding. And that is, it's unbelievable how many founders delegate information collection. And they actually prefer the filtered version because it's maybe more convenient, or because also it can come from a good intention. The good intention can be that you think it's more scalable that way if you delegate it. But what I've found is that actually it's the primary information that allows you to make prime decisions. And in the end, as a founder, that's your number one job. It's not fundraising, it's not hiring. They come second and third. It's actually making prime decisions. For that, you need primary information, hands down. Now, you can actually scale that because you can do sample testing, right? So great story from yesterday, and I'm sure there's other founders who do it like that as well. I don't think this founder is completely unique in that regard, but I was on a monthly catch-up call with one of my founders, and he casually mentioned, hey, currently we implemented this new sales enablement tool. And this new sales enablement tool automatically gets approval from the customer. Sorry, it's a phone conversation with customers. Automatically gets approval from the customers at the top of the meeting that they are fine to be recorded. That's nothing new. And it makes it available to the entire organization then. And he said, and now the interesting insight, he said, I've made it a habit when I go on my morning run, I only listen to sample conversations that our sales team is having with customers. And I thought to myself, dude, that is damn bang on. You know how great of a decision, he's the one leading product and technology in that organization. Do you know how great of an information set, if you do that consistently, it is to inform your product roadmap choices? It's unbelievably great. And so a lot of founders actually transition away from that, unfortunately, and I don't like it. I actually think founder-led sales is a continuous thing. It should go post-IPO even, but on a sample basis, of course, because you have a ton of other things. Founder-led product, the exact same thing. And here's the counterproof. Look into the Fortune 500 companies, go to the CEO list, and take an educated guess which of these CEOs are actually still doing sales and which of these CEOs are still very, very good at their product. Jensen Huang from NVIDIA, I would count into that bucket. Now tell me which of the other do you think Alex Karp from Palantir, in my opinion, probably high likelihood that he's doing that. And you will find 90% who are not. And I bet you there's a very strong correlation between those who do and their success.
Yeah. So firstly, the example that you brought up from our portfolio, that is indeed extremely impressive, I have to say. Very, very
Yeah,
impressive.
yeah.
Uh, it must be a real joy to work with a founder with that sort of work ethic and commitment to staying really, really close to the primary information.
I was very
Um,
pleasantly surprised.
yeah, and I think what you brought out in terms of your commentary on um, founders or leaders who are connected in a primary function in Fortune 500 companies or larger companies. I think that goes back to uh, what we're discussing. I think whether you are retaining, whether you have or choose to retain the founder mindset, or whether you're choosing to see yourself as a CEO
Hmm.
or CXO, right? Are you voluntarily demoting yourself, if I may call it that,
Yeah.
right? Right? By choosing to not stay a founder. And again, it's kind of interesting how in many companies it sort of happens almost automatically, where founders just decide that they've elevated themselves. I think they don't realize they've actually demoted themselves by
Hmm.
doing that. They demoted their stature in the company by doing this. But you're right. It when you put it out like that, you would think it should be a very common trait, but it's again quite shocking how rare it is. And my hypothesis again is because it's hard, right? Like how many founders would have the commitment, the work ethic to say, hey, you know what? I'll listen to customer call recordings on my morning in my mornings.
They would typically delegate it.
Yeah,
But the thing is, you can't delegate the entire decision making. You can delegate parts of it, but in an organization that scales, typically the organization lets the decision be taken by the person with the best information. That's what high performing organizations
yeah,
actually do. So if you delegate the information just always and then you let it
yeah,
filter, what you're implicitly doing is you are, to use your words, also demoting yourself from being the decision maker.
yeah, 100%. You're
So
letting. Yeah, I mean, this is not an investment context, obviously, but in a VC firm, this would be the analogy. This would be analogous to pretending like you're on the investment committee, but you're actually letting someone else or some other viewer
hey,
views.
but now that you mentioned that, I mean, we've talked about that before, but actually that
Mhm.
is what's happening in VC firms in the fourth,
Oh, it
fifth,
is. It is,
sixth
it is way
generation.
more. Yeah, yeah, it is. It is way more prevalent in VC firms than in startups.
Same issue.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
let,
yeah.
let me let me let me let me do less of the VC. You know, I
Yeah.
want to be part time, but I still want to sit on the IC and offer opinions and take the
Yes.
decision. Makes no sense. That's why Benchmark is so awesome because they actually, if you first of all, it's a partners only fund, which I, from a succession planning perspective, very much subscribe to. But secondly, either you're all in and you can decide, or you're all out and you're out.
Yeah. Again, I fully subscribe to that philosophy.
Yeah,
In my opinion, that's actually the only way you can consistently be effective as a VC, frankly. And
yeah.
and when I say VC, I mean it in the truest sense of placing asymmetric venture bets. Not obviously like a money management game and that sort of thing.
Indeed. And that brings us back to some of the other philosophies we have shared, and that is as a founder, you're a capital allocator as well. So a lot of your decisions is actually how do you allocate capital because someone entrusted me with that, and maybe they want whatever 20% IRR.
Yeah,
And the only reason why they allocated it to me is because they think I can generate 21% IRR allocating their capital in my kind of a setup. So that makes me an allocator, right? If I'm an
yeah.
allocator, I need to have primary information to make prime decisions.
Yeah, I mean, if we had to call it out as a separate point, I mean, it is very much related to the earlier one on primary information, but as a bonus point or topic, if I had to mention that, I wish more founders would remember that when they're all the burn or the resources or working capital they need to put out, all of those are capital allocation decisions,
Yeah.
and either now or eventually they need to feed into a return. And I think a lot of founders realize that a bit late in the journey,
Yeah.
that actually we were capital allocators. I think, by the way, I've actually had such conversations as well, where they sort of serendipitously or randomly realize that we were capital allocators along the way, and until then we were kind of just playing the burn game, like we were following rules that,
Mm.
now that we've got this much money, we need to spread out the money over 18 months or 24 months or whatever. So we've doing
Mm.
this burn, and doing this burn means uh, doing these XYZ things on people and other things. And it's more like it's not capital allocation. It's more like following a recipe, which may or may not apply for your situation, or whether there's a readiness to absorb it or not. It's just like a cookie cutter recipe based
Mm,
on burn generated by amount of money lasting a certain time.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, one of the healthy ways in order to help yourself get into that mode as a founder, the mode that you saw in that founder example that you gave towards the very end, to accelerate yourself into that mindset. Again, it sounds trivial, but surprisingly, very few founders on their at least first company have this. Is you're not given money for free. You're given money because you let go of your shares,
Yeah.
right? Technically not that, but you're more specifically, you let go of ownership of your company, either in the form of shares or in the form of making each of your shares less valuable, but you're letting go of that. And so if you sell me your shares, these shares better have a value to you. And so you're trading in your shares for my money. If you trade in your Pokemon cards for money, you don't think that money was for free. You literally let go of something that had value to you. You're doing the same with your shares. Now, that means that once you realize that, you also realize, okay, this money came at a cost. And so now
Yes.
that it came at a cost, I wanted to earn my return.
Yeah.
That is the whole secret to having this mindset. It's really not hard, but it is for many people non-obvious. Uh, Perhaps also because we as a venture industry don't do a particularly good job explaining it.
I think you nailed it. So if you break it down to the basics, it should be obvious. Unfortunately, I think the incentives on both ends, and I think VCs, there's no point sparing the VCs in this discussion. I think the incentives even there are
Yeah,
of a different nature and a different kind, pushing to different objectives.
yeah, I agree. Okay, good. I enjoyed this conversation, Shub.
Nice. I think this was, I mean, for our audience, this is not to say that just these 3 or 4 points are all that we would like to see. I think it's a longer list, but hope it was like a preview of some of our important asks, which are particularly rare and which we would particularly value when we see in founders.
Yeah, sweet. Well, thanks for the discussion and have a great Pumpkin Fest in Japan.
I will, sir. I always enjoy my Thanksgivings, as you know. That's what I do.
Nice. Maybe next year you can celebrate it in the Southern Hemisphere.
Yes, because again, that's my thing. Yeah.
Yeah, Thanksgiving in Argentina. They will know next year what hit them.
Why not?
Okay. Thank you, sir. Cheers.
Thank you, sir.